Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to our very first Azure Serverless conference. My name is Nithya Narasimhan, and I'm a senior cloud advocate on the developer relations team at Microsoft. And joining me from our amazing MVP and RD community is Melody. Hi, Melody. How are you doing today?
I'm great. So excited to be here.
I know. I'm joining from New York, and Melody, you're joining from?
British Columbia, Canada.
Woohoo! So take a minute, tell us in the chat where you're dialing in from. We'd love to see you from all over the world. So let's first talk a little bit about what we have in store for you today. Azure Serverless Conference was actually organized as a stage for the Azure developer communities, for both the community and industry experts to share what they've been doing with serverless in their applications. So we're going to talk about things like Azure Functions, Cosmos DB, Azure SQL, even got a battle royale between Logic Apps and Power Automate. Over the next 20 hours, you're going to see and hear from community members all around the globe. They've built amazing services. But first, how are we going to start this off, Melody?
Well, the Azure Serverless Conference is 3 hours. I'm so excited. 3 hours of live streaming, as well as an entire track of on-demand sessions. They're available now at aka.ms Azure Serverless Conf. I'll pop that into the chat for you to make it a little easier to find. Each of the 3 live streams will have its own unique content delivered by members of our Azure community. Such a great community that we have. If you miss any of these live stream sessions, no worries. All the sessions will be available on demand shortly after each session concludes. Each of the live sessions will have live Q&A with each of the speakers. If you'd like to ask questions, we'll be sure to join the live stream on Learn TV and submit questions in the chat. So what do we have going on today, Nithya?
Wow, where do I even start? I'm going to let you talk about the keynote, but I think we have a number of speakers. We're going to have talks on media processing workflows, a battle royale, as I mentioned, between Logic Apps and Power Automate. We're going to have an amazing session on how you can use serverless gaming, large-scale gaming. We have people talking about Cosmos DB and Azure SQL usage, and a lot more. But we're kicking this off with an amazing keynote, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, thanks for that great overview. I'm so excited. There's so much great things going on today, and I'm super excited about the first session of the day, the keynote, how the .NET community team uses serverless to automate all things. With John Galloway and James Montemagno, let's take a watch.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Oh, it's going wonderful.
Awesome.
Where are you both calling in from? I was always curious.
Yeah, we're super excited to be here and to kick off all the things. So we're ready when you're ready.
Let's do this.
Over to you guys.
Thank you. See if we can bring up our slides. Boop. Awesome. Well, I'm James Montemagno, like Melody said.
I'm John Galloway.
And we're on the .NET community team. And John did come up with that absolutely astonishing title. But John, it just didn't fit on the slide. I'm not going to lie about it.
I thought we got paid by the word.
Yeah, we do not. So we're going to show you how our team automates all of the things so we can do more things and then automate more things. So you might be wondering, well, who is the .NET community team? And I'm so glad that all of you asked. It is John and I, but we also have amazing team members from all around the globe that are out. And our mission, actually, from our OKRs, are to enable, grow, and nurture a diverse and inclusive .NET community to where actually every single individual feels warm and welcome and have the ability to learn how to build amazing applications with .NET. And of course, you can build serverless stuff with .NET, which is absolutely awesome. So you're saying, okay, like, what does actually a .NET community team do? That's a great mission statement, but what do we do? Well, we do a lot of things. We actually help build and maintain not only the .NET website, where millions of people go every single month to learn about .NET, but also interactive pieces like .NET Live TV that we'll talk about today. We help produce awesome content for Microsoft Learn, so anyone can learn for free how to build applications with .NET. We help support the amazing user groups and community members around the globe. We present at conferences just like this and also put on conferences like the upcoming .NET Conf at .NETconf.net, which is happening in November, so make sure to check that out. We also do workshops and provide workshops for the community. We provide architecture guidance. We help with the MVP program, and we help do the blogs. And this is just like 8 of the things that we do. We do like So much awesome stuff. And we love it because we love .NET and we love the community.
Yeah, like James is saying, we just have a blast doing all kinds of stuff. Some of the things I've worked on recently are like the .NET Conf, helping organize that, contributing things to the .NET website, just had some features launched last night. We help run live streaming shows, so much more. And, while we do have an amazing group of 6 people, we just can't do all that manually. There's just too much to organize and handle and set up. And we want to solve that by using .NET code. We don't want to write just a ton of extra .NET code, because then we'd have to write, debug, maintain, figure out why it didn't run on a leap year, all that stuff. So we really want to be strategic about what we do. So we have built a serverless army powered by .NET. So, a great example of this is the .NET website. It gets tens of millions of views in a month, and it's built completely on .NET technologies. On the front end, we've got ASP.NET Razor Pages and Blazor. Blazor is using WebAssembly. We've got Azure Search. Behind the scenes, we've got a ton of backend services. And one of the newest community projects we've launched is .NET Live TV. You can think of it as just like live news for .NET developers. It's got live streams and events, things going on all the time, and it's live chats with us and with the programming and engineering teams.
Yeah, and it has like a really interesting backstory too.
It does, yeah. So this started way back when .NET Core was first launching, like 2014, 2015 timeframe. And we started just doing these Google Hangouts calls. It was Scott Hanselman, Damian Edwards, and myself. And it was just random Google Hangouts, and we'd chat it and throw it out on Twitter and see who showed up. And after a while, Damian put together a website. This is some of the first stuff that prototyped Razor Pages. And it was a really cool website, but there was still a lot of manual work. If you didn't set things up just right, if you didn't name them just right, the show wouldn't work. It was a catastrophe. And it took tons of manually updating. And also, it was very, very specific to ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. It was one show.
Yeah, and before I was John's manager, I was super jealous of everything that John was doing with the ASP.NET Community Stand-Up. I worked on the Xamarin team, and I basically just wanted to copy everything that John was doing. I was like, this is amazing. And I actually set up a call with John, and I said, I want to steal all your code and do all the things. And then we said, hey, you know what? Like, why don't we just do this, but for everything, right? Because .NET truly is your platform to build anything, not just web apps, not just mobile applications, but truly anything. So we went off and we talked to all the PMs and engineers, and we said, why don't we set up community stand-ups for all of the shows? Granted, we didn't have the infrastructure, really know how to build this thing, but like we could do it. I've never built a website, but John has. So we could totally build this, right? So funnily enough, we got on Twitch and we started live streaming for about 6 weeks, just one day a week. And we built an entire .NET Community Stand-Up, completely open source web page. It pulled from a single YouTube playlist as the source of truth. It had a countdown timer, and it parsed all the show information into different categories and all this stuff. We're feeling real good. We have people in the studio in Channel 9, and we're just like, wow, this is awesome. And then COVID hit. And then we're like, well, we got stand-ups. We got to figure out what we want to do. And all of a sudden, all of the team members from other teams said, we love what you're doing, but we want our own shows. We want to do more shows. We want to engage with the community more. So we said, let's just go crazy with this thing, not just have a .NET Community Stand-Up with a bunch of different shows. Let's build .NET Live TV that at this point has 8 different shows, and we're streaming 10 times a week on the .NET YouTube, Twitch, and Learn TV. So we said, well, how are we going to build this thing, right? I haven't built a real production application in a while. So let's go into the requirements mode. Well, what do we need this thing to do? Well, we actually need to normalize the data into a single API. YouTube is one source of data where we schedule shows, but we also schedule shows on Twitch and on Learn TV and other places, and want to highlight other community members. So let's sort of be able to update that schedule from not only YouTube, but also blob storage. We want upcoming shows and completed shows. We want a live show view, kind of, so we know if something is streaming right now so we can display information. We, of course, need to easily be able to scale this thing. What if right now we have 10 shows, but we have 20 shows next week? Everyone wants to start live streaming. We want to be able to add those things easily. And of course, we want to get metrics. So we want to see how our shows are doing, how many comments, how the engagement is going. And of course, generate those sweet, sweet reports for all of our bosses.
Yeah, so the first part is to create a backend for this website. So what it does, it's an Azure function. It's running with with .NET, and it's pinging against some backend data sources. It's got a YouTube API, and it's also got JSON files. And YouTube API rate limits us. So by setting this up in a function, we're able to kind of consolidate that and minimize our calls over to that. And then that shares that information over to Azure Search. Azure Search is already being used by the .NET website, so this was a really easy integration to do there. Then when we want to surface this on the website, we needed kind of a backend API. And fortunately, that was really easy to set up with that backend infrastructure. So we've got a Blazor WebAssembly front end, and then it calls into a REST API powered by Azure Functions with .NET. And then that calls into the Azure Search and gets us a JSON blob of data. What's really cool with that is the front end has to do almost no work. It just gets this pre-digested, perfectly set up information and just displays it. So no matter how much traffic the front end gets, it really scales well. And once we've got that information, it lights up all this cool stuff on the front end. So we've got one API endpoint that tells us when there's a live show, and it'll automatically flash at the top of the website. And then once you're there, we want you to see our other shows. And so this lights up. Again, we've got this thing that says, here's all our different shows you can see. And then we want to make it easy to find our upcoming and recently completed shows. And so that's all right there as well.
Yeah, it's really cool that, we started with one function, but it scales out that we create like 10 different functions to all do different little pieces of functionality, both publicly available and some admin functionality too. And then on top of that, right, we have the website. And then the important part is to get all the analytics and all that data. So the analytics is actually really interesting because, we're streaming to a bunch of different places, which means we need to integrate into all of the different data sources. So we actually use Power Automate here. And there is a battle royale later, and we use both Power Automate and Logic Apps, which is fun based on the purpose. But we have Power Automation that is scheduled basically every night. And what it does is it pings a bunch of different services and normalizes the data. So the first thing it does, we have yet another Azure function powered by C# and .NET that calls into the YouTube API. And what that will do is get all of the on-demand views and all the chats and all the likes and all the comments, and it shoves that into a Cosmos DB database, normalizing the data. So updates, deletes, and reads and all this stuff. We also have some Excel spreadsheets for live, information that's coming in on the shows. So it's just like another piece of data source because everybody loves Excel. So we have some data there and it normalizes that data into the Cosmos. And then we also have internal data sources and we use Custo queries in that Power Automation. And then again, we shove that into the Cosmos DB database and then generate a beautiful, wonderful Power BI dashboard that we can send to all of our bosses. And this is actually what it looks like. This is one of ours. As you can see, I'm a Power BI expert. And as I shake my head, no, you can't see me. Thanks, Lamont, for hiding my face. I can't do it. There you go, shaking my head. I'm not. But, to me, I was able to take all that data, generate it all here, and see how our shows are doing over time. And of course, all this data is public data, right? You could go to every single Twitch, every single YouTube and actually look up this data. But if you're one of our 20, 30 hosts, you don't want to do that. You want to go to one place that's here. And while we do have this beautiful Power BI dashboard, you got to go load up Power BI, go do this thing. So we said, let's automate and make it even easier to give direct feedback to all of the show hosts. So we created weekly reports. This is cool because we're reusing all this data and all this intelligence. And we have yet another Power Automation every week that runs, pings that Cosmos DB database, normalizes and figures out the last 2 weeks of show data, and sends a team message and an email every single week to all of the live streamers. That's really cool. And this is what that looks like. This is actually a screenshot from our Teams channel where anyone can come in and see the data and, of course, go into the Power BI for more information.
Yeah, and so this was one of our first ones, and it worked really well for us. And once we had kind of the code and the patterns down for this, we started seeing opportunities all over the place. So one that popped up recently is this .NET events. And, the .NET website, now that we had live shows on it, was starting to become a very like dynamic community place to hang out. And so we thought it was really natural to make it easy to find events that were going on around the globe as well. So, first of all, we thought, well, we'll need to create our own API. And it turned out there already were some data sources internal at Microsoft where we were tracking, hey, who's going to this conference and which conferences are we sponsor? But they were for all conferences, not just .NET. So we needed to filter and normalize that data a bit. And then we also wanted to be able to call out some featured events at the top of the screen, things like .NET Conf that are really important. We want to make sure that we were able to feature those as well. And then we didn't want to be doing all this every time you hit our website. So we wanted to have a data cache that would keep all that information. So here's how we went about doing that. First of all, we dusted off our code for our Azure functions. However, this time I decided to use an Azure function using .NET 5 in isolated mode. One of the reasons for that was that it made it really easy to integrate with SQL Server. And so I'm able to use SQL Server with Entity Framework and connect directly across. For our featured events, we're using a JSON blob that's just over in a GitHub repo. And the reason for this is it makes it very easy for team members to submit a pull request and update it there. And then this goes through and gets all that information and then puts it in a JSON blob using that pattern again.
Yeah, we love this pattern if you can't tell. So it's one thing you'll see over and over again. But I think this is really cool because this isolated mode, John, this thing is amazing.
Oh, it's crazy. So some of the things that I just love doing with this isolated mode is I was able to use all my ASP.NET Core skills. So I could use ASP.NET Core configuration. I could use user secrets, which are awesome. So that uses a JSON file on my local disk, but it's not in the source code directory. And so I can't accidentally check it into GitHub. Hands up if you've ever done that. And then also it can overlay that when I put that up in production, and those user secrets are then overwritten by environment variables in Azure. And then hooking up Entity Framework is super easy. It's like the 2 lines of code that I've written a million times, and I just do that again. So here's the actual function. This is the thing that runs on a schedule and goes and gets those upcoming events. And I can, you'll see the token replacement there, update events timer, and that's able to read directly from the, my local settings on my computer and then the Azure settings in production. And then here's kind of the workhorse function that runs the, it's the brains of the function here. And we've got it separated into a separate function so it can be pinged via a REST call or run on a timer. So you'll see up at the top, I've got an EF query, and it's got a link filter to make sure that we're only getting those .NET events and the ones we're ready to put up on the website. And then after we've got that, super easy to just process it. So we serialize it to a JSON blob and save it off to storage. Again, using that pattern James and I have been talking about where we have that JSON cache. So for instance, if we're unable to hit the database, it doesn't matter. We can still respond with the information. And then we also at the bottom quickly run over, grab that JSON blob from the GitHub repo and also store that information. So then when it's time to retrieve data, we have a very simple ASP.NET Core is able to call into an HTTP endpoint exposed by that .NET 5 REST API. And then it grabs the JSON data and just exposes it over. One really cool thing that I was able to do as part of this is there's a new feature that they had just enabled for this, which is open API generation. So this will generate a Swagger document that is great for documentation, for sharing it with clients and with other developers, which I did. I sent them, here's a link to our Swagger. And you'll see it's just a few attributes that I had to set up at the top of the page. And it automatically, like I tell it, this is the body type, and it's able to generate the Swagger from that. And a really cool also thing that I get out of this is a Swagger page. So it actually generates this documentation. Like I said, I was able to send it over to a team and say, this is the API we need to support. And these Swagger pages also, when you click on a specific function, it will show you all the different things, and you can actually click on links to try it out and test it. So the end result is this page. And what's really magical about this is we don't have to do any work. It's automatically maintained. You'll see those two call out events up at the top of the page. Those are maintained by just putting some information in a JSON blob over in GitHub, and it all just works.
Yeah, I think this is really, really cool because as you see in the back end, we can use sort of that standard ASP.NET logic that we know and love, but also like Azure Functions hides all of that authentication. It hides all that configuration you need because you can put all of your connection strings, your username, your password, any of that information into the environment variables, right? Mm-hmm. So none of that stuff is checked into source code or anything like that or hard coded. It's all environment variables. So we can easily pivot back and forth. Like we said earlier, the .NET website is ginormous and it's many, many pieces of technologies. So we wanted to make sure that if we're having an event and marketing sends hundreds of thousands of people to live TV or to the events page, the rest of the website stays up and it's ready and good to go. So these are all deployed into different resource groups in the back end, and they can all communicate with each other. So if one part of the website's getting clobbered with information, everything stays up and it's ready to go. So I absolutely love this architecture on there. Really simplifies development all up, especially when you're building at scale. Now, we've talked a lot about like some of the .NET website pieces with .NET Live TV and the events page, but I also wanted to talk about our blogging system because this is actually a really interesting problem to solve, which is like how blog articles get onto the blog. And now, John, I know what you're saying, like, all right, you probably just log into a CMS, you write some blog posts and you schedule like done, right? No. Because we're engineers. It can't be that simple, and that's not allowed. So the problem is, it's like tons of people are blogging all the time on the .NET blog from the team. And we wanted to create sort of an engineering system for the blog. So I worked with Emo Landworth and Jamie Singleton from my team. And we said, well, how do we make blogging easier for anybody? Well, we think about this. Like, well, what does that mean? We want easy authoring experience. We don't have to have people log into a system, write a bunch of HTML or different things. We want them to write in a language they feel familiar with when it comes to blogging. And usually we want sort of the review process to be easy. If you've ever used a CMS, you can't like leave comments. You can't do suggestions, right? We're engineers. We want to do the things that we're doing in GitHub or on DevOps or wherever we're coding at.
And this is a big deal with these .NET blogs. Some of these get hundreds of review comments.
Yeah.
So we really need a good review system.
And a lot of times these blogs are scheduled, a month ahead of time. So we want that long process, anyone involved to do it. And of course, we want to make sure that, blogs are scheduled correctly on the calendar. And of course, got to have sweet reports. So this is the actual authoring experience that we use internally for the .NET blog is we use GitHub. It is our one source for all things blogs. And it's easy. Every single .NET team member has access to the .NET blog repo, and they just write a markdown file. Like, you just write markdown because that's how we code, right? We write markdown to document things. That is how you blog. And then you make a pull request. And that's it. You make a pull request and the review process starts. There's a bunch of automation there with actually GitHub Actions runs a bunch of .NET code. And that actually validates all the blog entries. And I'll show some of that code here in a second. And then when the blog is validated and ready to go, it actually hits a logic app and sends it information to start the scheduling process. What's really cool is that Emo actually wrote a .NET command line tool that can run anywhere to help streamline this process. So anyone goes in, they clone the repo, and they just say new post, which runs a .NET service and then script, and you just enter information. What's the name of the post? What do you want the slug to be? When's the publication date? And select your categories, and it scaffolds it out for you. Then you just write the blog post. And here's actually Stephen Tobe's amazing blog post on .NET 6 performance improvements. And it's Markdown, right? You just write Markdown, you do the thing, and he created a pull request with it. And you can see there's 119 conversation pieces on this single blog post because it's ginormous. It's amazing if you haven't read it. It's absolutely astonishing. And when that PR starts and when it's merged, there's this validation flow that happens. So we have a planner workflow that happens that calls the logic app and a validator. And that validator is just a big .NET script that gets run in GitHub Actions. It's all automated, right? Which is really cool. So there's about 24 different rules that get automatically validated. Like, are images accessible? Are they the right size? Making sure that any language specific URLs aren't in there. So if you're in Spain, it goes to the correct URL on documentation for you. So it's really nice. It's all automated. Emo wrote that. He's amazing. And then once it's validated, it kicks off this logic app. And this logic app is in charge of putting things on our planner, which is like a Kanban board, but it has calendar integration too. And there's a lot of things that happen here when this logic app kicks off, because it needs to figure out and connect the GitHub pull request to a planner ID. It needs to make that connection. And it needs to figure out, well, do I need to create a task on the planner? Do I need to update a task on the planner? Do I need to delete a task on the planner? Do I need to merge it? So the GitHub action sends information about the pull request to the logic app. So it has a webhook and it's listening there for it. And what it does is it parses all this information and stores information about that connection between the planner task and the GitHub task in table storage. And then it does a bunch of operations on the planner. And this is what that looks like. Woo, look at that thing. It's beautiful. Oh, I just get shivers and joy whenever I see this logic app that I wrote. I'm not a logic app pro, but look at this thing. And it's so, okay, let me zoom in here. Let me show you what's actually happening here. The first thing is that there's a bunch of different ifs and compilations to figure out what it needs to do. So one of the things that may need to happen is a pull request may have been closed and not merged. And it goes down and it figures that out based on information passed in and if there's anything in table storage already. And if so, it deletes the tasks on the planner board and deletes the entry in table storage. Another possibility is that the thing has been merged and it's ready to go and it already exists. So move that planner ticket over to another bucket and then assign a task, that task to individuals to schedule it inside of our CMS. Other things is it could have just been an update. Maybe they changed the due date, maybe the title, that just updates it automatically. Else, if it's brand new, it will go through, create the task, add details, and then update the table storage automatically. So it creates this beautiful flow for what it's doing. And this is what it looks like. So here in the example of Steven's post, we see that a new entry has been added at the top of this blog draft in process. When it's merged, or if it's just been updated, it'll update these dates. But once it's merged, it moves it over to SEO review and it'll attach it to other individuals that need to review it. And then, of course, there's also this nice planner board so we can schedule out our blog posts automatically, which is really, really nice. Now, once the blog is up and running and good to go, we need reports. And there's a whole bunch of really cool things that happen here. Whenever a blog post is posted, and that ticket is closed on the planner, that kicks off a Power Automation hook that then updates our internal DevOps board for tracking. We also sort of use the DevOps as sort of a database in a way, because every night we have a Power Automation that runs off, calls into our Custo service to get information about blog views, updates that ticket automatically on DevOps. And then we have another one that every week kicks off, another Power Automation, calls into a query into the Azure DevOps board and generates a Teams message and an email. And this is what that looks like. Again, very similar to our live stream stuff. And we see all the different blog posts they can click on and see their views, but I've hid them here because that's internal information. It's over there. And these are just 3 examples of things that we've automated that you get to kind of see every single day on the .NET website and enjoy on the blog. But we automate all the things because we're ridiculous and we love it. So much that we love this automation that I can't help myself. I even automate our team stand-up because I don't think it's fair if you just go alphabetical every single week. So I have a Power Automate that calls into an Azure function that randomly sorts a bunch of names and things and posts information to our Teams channel. And to make sure that our stand-ups go super streamlined and no one talks about the weather, every morning I generate a weather report, fully automated, not only with the weather, the moon conditions, the precipitation percentage, and the air quality as well, which all call into different backends, which is really, really cool.
And once you've got this, you can apply it to all kinds of things. We have these .NET Conf community events all over the world. Used to be in the past, there's a lot of like manual work in order to review them and get them, make sure they're in the right date ranges and all that, and get them scheduled. Here, we've updated this so you fill in a Microsoft form and it automatically goes live. So here you submit the form, a function runs, it does some validation to make sure it's in the right date range, it checks for who to notify and all this stuff, and then it adds it to an Excel spreadsheet, because as James mentioned, we love Excel, puts it on a planner board for easy management by people that are helping with the events, and sends out notification emails. And then we need to geolocate to put them on the map. And so the way we do this, a function runs, it hits the Bing Maps API for geolocation and stores that information. This is important because we're rate limited on that Bing Maps API, so we're not hitting it unnecessarily. Then for the website to display it, super easy. .NET function exposes an HTTP endpoint and returns JSON to an ASP.NET web page.
That's right. I mean, I literally love this stuff so much that once I got into it, I said, what else can I make serverless? At the beginning of the pandemic, I got super into Animal Crossing on my Nintendo Switch, and I needed to figure out how to share my turnip prices with all my friends. So I created a completely serverless application called Island Tracker on the App Store. It's free. If you're into Animal Crossing. And what this does is every single API, the authentication, the backend, the updates, everything is 100% Azure functions, uses table storage on the backend to figure out all of the user accounts and information, 100% written in C# with .NET, including the mobile applications, all written with Xamarin Forms. So truly, you can build absolutely anything, and you can go off and build an awesome serverless army powered by these amazing services and .NET. If you want to learn more, go to .NET for all the .NET goodness, including all of this amazing stuff that you saw here today. And thanks for watching. Have a great Azure Serverless Conf.
That was fabulous, guys. That was so exciting.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
I was actually
really did automate
I think
everything.
We had there was a lot of engagement. We had a couple of questions, and I think we have time to take one. So one of the questions was, for real-time API calls, are you using Azure Functions? What about cold starts? Yes. And using premium plans, maybe.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, for the most part, it's not really a problem, partly because we also cache our services on the front end. So we allow enough time. But usually these functions are so lightweight, they're doing so little work because they're using this kind of pre-built JSON blob, system that they can return that information very quickly. So because the website or the consumer is caching that information and we've got long enough timeouts, it hasn't been a problem.
I think if we have time, there was one other question which says, do you have a documentation blog instructing you how to use Service Principal to access block storage? I think that's something you might be able to even answer on the chat. That's a long answer.
Yeah.
But short answer, yes.
I will say that one thing that reminds me of is we do almost no code in order to handle authentication, which we love doing, right? So we handle all that stuff using like Power Automate, and we just pre-authenticate with our services, and then we don't have to write code to handle that stuff.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful part too, is to the point of using Logic Apps and Power Automate is I'm already signed in. I'm already authenticated with Azure or with Power Automate, which means when I'm connecting to Cosmos DB, or I'm connecting to Excel spreadsheet, or I'm connecting to Teams, I'm already logged in. I literally don't write any code to do that, and it knows everything about me. That's one of my favorite parts about using that type of automation when you're integrating with so many different systems. Like, could I go and read an Excel spreadsheet and parse it myself? No, I could, but I'm just going to let Power Automate and Logic Apps do it for me, which I think is absolutely lovely.
What? You all made me want to come and follow your Twitch channel now, because honestly, I'm not even kidding. This was the most amazing keynote talk ever. I'm going to write this whole thing down. I find so many reusable design patterns. I hope you can stick around and on the chat and answer a bunch of questions.